It was a quiet Friday night, and Sarah decided to stay in, wrapped in her favorite blanket, flipping through TV channels. The glow of the screen illuminated her dimly lit living room. Her dog, Max, snoozed peacefully on the rug. After settling on an old, obscure TV show she'd never heard of before, titled The Midnight Viewer, Sarah felt a strange chill. The show's grainy footage depicted a man sitting in a chair, staring directly at the camera. He didn't speak. He just stared. The clock ticked past midnight, and Sarah noticed something odd. The man on the TV seemed to shift slightly whenever she looked away. First, his head tilted. Then his hand moved, pointing directly at the screen. Sarah's pulse quickened. Max suddenly lifted his head, growling low. Sarah glanced at the screen again. The man in the show was no longer seated. The chair was empty. She grabbed the remote and frantically tried to turn off the TV, but it wouldn't shut off. The man's face suddenly appeared, filling the entire screen. His voice crackled through the speakers. "Why do you look so scared? I'm already here." Before she could react, Sarah felt cold. Sarah froze, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. Slowly, she turned her head, dreading what she might see. Her living room was empty. No one was there. But the air felt heavier, colder, like she wasn't alone. The man on the TV was gone, replaced by static. Then the static cleared, and Sarah gasped. She was staring at her own living room on the screen. The camera angle showed her sitting on the couch, the same way she was now. She could even see Max at her feet. Suddenly, the camera view on the TV began to pan, slowly zooming in toward the back of the room. It revealed something she hadn't noticed before: a shadowy figure standing in the corner, almost blending into the darkness. Sarah whipped her head around to look, but the corner was empty. When she turned back to the TV, the figure was closer, moving toward her in slow, jerking steps. The closer it came on the screen, the colder the room grew. Max started barking furiously, his eyes fixed on the same corner. This time, when Sarah looked, the figure was there. Its hollow eyes glowed faintly, and its mouth twisted into a grotesque smile. Sarah screamed, scrambling off the couch. The lights flickered, then went out, leaving her in complete darkness. The TV screen was the only source of light now, and the figure was gone from it. But she wasn't alone. A whisper came from behind her. "You invited me in by watching." Something icy brushed against her shoulder. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she stumbled forward, nearly tripping over Max. The whisper echoed in her ears, growing louder, turning into a low, guttural laugh. She could feel it, whatever it was, moving closer behind her. "Stay away," she screamed, clutching the TV remote like it was a weapon. She pointed it at the screen and pressed every button, trying desperately to turn it off. The screen only flickered, showing distorted images of her living room. But now the footage wasn't Livy, it was showing her moments in the past. There she was sitting on the couch, looking relaxed just an hour ago. Then the footage fast-forwarded, showing her watching the strange man on the show. But something was wrong. In the footage, she wasn't alone. Behind her in the recording, the shadowy figure was already there, standing silently in the corner. It had been watching her the entire time. No, this isn't real," Sarah whispered, her hands trembling. Max suddenly yelped and bolted toward the kitchen, his claws skidding on the hardwood floor. Sarah wanted to follow him, but something rooted her to the spot. The whisper came again, this time from the TV itself. "Don't run, Sarah. You're already part of the show." The screen crackled, and her reflection appeared. But it wasn't just her. The shadowy figure loomed behind her reflection, its bony hand resting on her shoulder. Before she could scream, the TV emitted a blinding light, and everything went silent. When Sarah opened her eyes, she wasn't in her living room anymore. She was sitting in a dark, empty studio, lit only by a single camera pointed directly at her. The shadowy figure stood behind the camera, adjusting it. The man from The Midnight Viewer stepped into the frame, his eerie smile stretching wider than humanly possible. He gestured to her and said, "Welcome to the show, Sarah. It's your turn to entertain them now." As he spoke, Sarah realized with dawning horror that she could hear faint whispers and laughter coming from somewhere in an unseen audience watching her every move. Sarah's hands gripped the sides of the chair she found herself sitting in, her knuckles turning white. The whispers grew louder, surrounding her like a suffocating fog. She could see nothing beyond the blinding spotlight shining down on her. "What do you want from me?" she shouted, her voice trembling. The man from the midnight viewer tilted his head, his face twisting into a grotesque mask of amusement. "You've already given us what we want. You watched, and now they're watching you." Sarah's stomach churned as the whispers turned into voices chanting her name in eerie, overlapping tones. The man waved a hand, and the spotlight dimmed, revealing an endless expanse of shadowy figures in the audience. They sat in silence, their hollow eyes fixed on her. Some clapped in slow, deliberate rhythm, the sound echoing unnaturally. "I'm not playing your game," Sarah cried, trying to stand, but her body wouldn't move. She felt glued to the chair, as though invisible chains held her in place. "Oh, but you already are," the man replied, his voice dripping with mockery. He leaned closer, his impossibly long fingers reaching out to tap her forehead. The moment he touched her, a flood of images and memories surged through her mind. She saw herself sitting on the couch, watching TV. She saw the man staring back at her from the screen, but this time, she saw what came next. She had fallen asleep, and while she dreamed, the shadowy figure had stepped out of the television. It had lingered, standing over her, whispering things she couldn't remember. "You invited us in," the man said, breaking her thoughts. "And now, we'll keep you here forever." The studio began to change. The walls melted away, replaced by the familiar setting of her living room. But something was off. The colors were muted, the air heavy with an unnatural stillness. Sarah looked at the TV, now glowing faintly. Her own face stared back at her from the screen, terror-stricken, as she sat in the studio. She realized with horror that the roles had been reversed. She was now trapped inside the show, and someone else was watching her from her living room. "No! Let me out!" she screamed, pounding on the invisible barrier between her and the screen. But the man only grinned. "Enjoy the show, Sarah. The viewers always do." As he spoke, the screen in her new prison flickered to life, showing a new person sitting on their couch at home, turning on the midnight viewer. The cycle had begun again. And Sarah? She could only watch, trapped forever, as the next victim fell into the same nightmare.